think I've always been curious. I'm fascinated by people and why they do what they do and how they choose their paths and what we can learn when we invest in conversation. I think if we piece together all the bits of conversation that we hear, the learnings we get from books and experiences, and what we read and see is incredible. My guest today is Courtney Lynch, someone I've never actually met in person, but through a post she wrote on Facebook, piqued my curiosity to reach out and start a conversation to see how I could learn more
Thank
and
you
help her where
for
I
having
could.
me on here. It's lovely to be able to speak about my experiences. I definitely want to make it clear from the outset that I'll be speaking about my experiences as a non-Indigenous person living in an Indigenous community and what it's like to be a sort of a remote teacher. But I'm not Indigenous, and so I can't speak to what it's like to be an Indigenous person living here.
Could you describe for us, Courtney, could you describe for us where you are right now? I can see you via the call and I can see some beautiful artwork behind you, but tell us a little bit more about where you're sitting and what you can see.
Well, I'm currently in Nyirripi, which is a Indigenous community. It's a Warlpiri community. So the people who live here are Warlpiri and speak Warlpiri, and we're on Warlpiri country. It's about 500 kilometres northwest of Alice Springs in the middle of the Tanami Desert. So, today it's a beautiful 30-degree day in the middle of winter. So it's a really gorgeous, lovely place. And it's a small community. I think our current census data is looking like we've got about 280 people who live here. And Alice Springs is our nearest town. So, that 5 hours away to our nearest Coles and Woolworths and cafes and restaurants, all of that is about 5 hours away from us here.
Right. And are you in the school at the moment or in your home, or where are you sitting?
I'm in my home at the moment. That's where the internet is slightly better. That's one of the downsides to being so remote. The reception's not great.
Well, we'll hopefully stay connected, but we're lucky that we can be connected. So that's quite a plus. The post I read in the Bayside Community Hub also showed that you were local to me in the Bayside, Melbourne. So how did you come to be teaching in Nyirripi?
Yeah, I grew up in Bayside. I went to school in Bayside. I did all of my study in Melbourne. And it was actually when I was doing my Masters of Teaching that I was offered the opportunity to go on a placement in a remote Indigenous community. And I went to a place called Yuendumu, which is about an hour and a half from where I am now. It's another Warlpiri community. And I just loved that placement so much. I thought, it really opened my eyes to how sort of ignorant and naive I'd been to community life and the life of Indigenous people who are still living on country in communities. And I just thought it was a fantastic opportunity to learn another language, learn about another culture, and a culture that's, so important to the country that I'm living in, but that I didn't have a huge amount of knowledge on beforehand. And so as soon as I had finished my Masters, I sort of moved up here. So I moved up to Yuendumu originally, and then I was offered a job at Nyirripi this year to come across and start doing some of the bilingual stuff that I have really found a passion for while I've been out here. And so I've been in Nyirripi this year teaching our high school class.
All right. And can you share with us a typical sort of day in your life and in the classroom or in the school setting?
Yeah, it's very tricky to do a typical day because the one thing I love about being remote is that no 2 days are ever the same, and you just have absolutely no idea what each day will bring. You've got to be very flexible up here. But a typical day is we're a very small school. We only have 3 classrooms, so a lower primary, an upper primary, and a high school class. And so a typical day would just involve getting to, school early. We do a breakfast program at school so kids can come in, have some breakfast and hang out before school starts. And then during the day, we try and teach a bilingual program. So teaching kids English, but we're also teaching them Warlpiri. So we're teaching them Warlpiri reading and writing so that they can read and write in their own first language. And we also teach through a Warlpiri theme cycle, which is 12 themes that elders have declared are really important and integral for their children and grandchildren to learn, and that gets taught as well. So we try and split the day between having Warlpiri teaching time, where we have these incredible Warlpiri teachers who come into the classroom, work with us every day, and English teaching time. And in my classroom, our afternoons are for our fun, engaging, hands-on work. So we do a lot of, we run the op shop and we also do cooking, we do work skills programs, and we do things that are really, relevant to the kids in their lives. So that's a typical school day, but, in a community, your day doesn't end at school. You might come home and you'll have some kids drop by who want to just sit out the front and talk with you for a bit and, chat, talk story, they're calling it. And so they might come for a visit. You might go out with some local families looking for bush food or bush medicine. Sometimes I go down to the youth centre because I think that's a really great relationship building place where you can really build positive relationships with your students and the community. So I might hang out at the youth centre 1 or 2 nights a week. And the great thing about it is that every day is different. So some days that might be a typical day, other days we're out on bush trips. Other days 2 teachers are sick and that's half of our teaching staff. And, and so the whole day gets thrown out the window. And so, when you're remote, you never quite know what's going to happen.
I like flexibility. Actually, one of the things when I used to be a teacher, I wasn't so sure about teaching reading at the same time every day. So I possibly would like the flexibility and the adventure that would come along the way, I would think. So what do you think you need to be a remote teacher, with 280 people in the community and 5 hours to a shop? Our son actually did a gap year in South Africa and he was in a very remote area out there in an outdoor camp, and I know it was an hour and a half away to sort of the nearest civilization, and when we did go to visit it was very remote, but you're even more remote. So what does someone need to be a teacher in that sort of area and not just think this is going to be fantastic? There must be a lot of skills that you have to draw upon.
There is. I think the most important thing is you have to really know yourself. And so you have to know if you're going to be the right person to be out here or if you're going to struggle with it. And it can be tricky. In some ways, you're very isolated because you are very far away from sort of shops and cafes and everything that sort of you sort of used to when you're growing up in a Western context. But in other ways, you're living in a community, so you're the furthest thing from isolated because you've got people dropping in and out of your house all day. You're socializing around the clock, and everyone knows everyone's business because you can see, wherever someone's going, and it becomes quite a funny thing where you look out window and you see someone driving out one of the dirt roads and you're going, oh, I wonder where they're going. The next time you see them, you ask, oh, where were you going? Were you going out bush? Were you getting this or that? And so you're very isolated, but you're also incredibly visible all the time. So that's something that I know a lot of people might not enjoy, but I quite like that community sense. I think it's fantastic. But I think as well as knowing if that's going to, sit right with you, you also have to be really flexible. Because as I said, days change, weeks change, things happen, and you've just got to be able to adapt and respond to them in the moment, because you don't have all that support out here. We don't have supply teachers who can come in and teach a class if a teacher's sick. And so you've got to really be able to think on your feet and adapt to situations. I think you also need to be really passionate about building relationships, not just with students, but with parents, with communities, and with families. And I think that's one of the most important things. And above all, I think you need to come into here with an open mind and think, I'm ready to listen and learn and acknowledge that, you're teaching cross-culturally. And when you're teaching cross-culturally, the culture that you're teaching to needs to be prioritized and come first.
So do you get any downtime, and what do you do if you have downtime?
Hobbies become a real thing out here. You get very good at coming up with hobbies. I never thought I'd be the gardening type until I moved out here, and then I like to potter around in the garden. Arts and crafts, going out on bush trips, camping, they all sort of become your downtime. And then every so often, you need to go into town to get your groceries, and you can use that as a bit of a break where you can recuperate and know that no one's going to come knocking on your door for a night.
Yes, I can remember when we went to visit our son. I think I took 27 paperbacks over, in the days before Kindle, and he'd read them in about 2 weeks. So just reading was definitely his pastime at that stage. In fact, he didn't read that much before he went, so it was probably a very good thing for him.
There you go, kick-started it.
Certainly developed a love for it as well. So I believe that sometimes you're just in the right place. And for me, as I said, I was just scrolling through social media, and I may have missed your post if I hadn't have been interested by the photographs that you put up there, and drawn into reaching out. And so what prompted you to post? What prompted your post? Tell me a bit about that.
Well, it actually was a Warlpiri woman who I work with, Janita, who she's one of the Warlpiri teachers at our school, and she turned around one day and said, "Oh, I've heard of another community that's doing an op shop, and I think that would be a really good thing for us to have." And so we sort of sat down and talked through it and thought, what would it look like, and how would it work? And the more we talked about it, the more we realised that this op shop could have benefits across a whole range of different areas for the school. And for the community, we thought this is great because our high school students can do real world relevant examples of, maths, where they're adding things together and taking them away, and, calculating change, and they can be working on their literacy skills at the same time, and they can be doing these sort of work employment skills that will prepare them for the future. And so we thought that's fantastic, but we also thought, well, this is great for parents because, we're going to be engaging with parents who are coming in, and we're going to be building those relationships with them and making school more of a safe place for them to come into and enjoy being in, and engage with their children's learning. And it's also going to really benefit the community because, Alice Springs is a 5-hour drive away, so that's a 10-hour round trip. So if you run out of underwear and socks and you need a few more clothes, you're adding on hundreds of extra dollars just to travel into town, to stay in town, to have accommodation, to buy meals when you're there. There's all these extra costs that then come in, and so people in remote communities don't have access to that. So we thought this could really benefit both the school, our students, families, our community. And so we started it, and we posted in a couple of places, and we got some good donations, and we saw a really fantastic response. And Tony, another wonderful Warlpiri woman who I work with, has taken complete ownership over the op shop now. She runs it. She teaches the kids. She's in there every Monday when we're open with them. And she was saying we're running out of things. And so I thought, goodness, I've got to find some new places to post to so we can keep, getting our supplies up.
Yeah. And do you know how far the donations have come from? Has it been just?
Yeah. We've had donations from all over Australia. It's really, I love it when we go to the post office once a week because our mail gets flown in once a week and we can go pick it up. And we see on the packages that there's, people from Western Australia and Tasmania and New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland and South Australia. And you think every single state or territory in Australia seems to have donated, and I don't know how they find out about it. I don't know if it gets shared on and posted around, but it's been fantastic to see that response.
Well, I think there is a big following when there is something heartfelt. I spoke to another group in the lockdown last year, and they've probably trebled their size since that time. And I'm not saying I had anything to do with that, but just their following has grown because of this network of people wanting to contribute and connect and be part of something meaningful. So I think that's true. So I didn't run through the list of things that you're looking for or that you put in your post, but would you like to just give us some idea of the sort of things that would be useful? And do people box them or put them in express envelopes, or how are they coming to you?
I think the most sort of economically viable way for people to do it is there's like these $18 satchel bags that you can buy this big satchel bag and fill it up. And we've had people send whole doonas and things up in them. So they seem to accommodate quite a lot in those satchel bags.
Yes.
And they can post it to, our post number is PMB 125 via Alice Springs, which is because it comes on the plane, and then Nyirripi, Northern Territory. And I mean, we need sort of a little bit of everything. We need women's clothing, particularly larger sizes, and particularly sort of skirts and long skirts, long dresses, things that are really, light and good in the hot weather. But we also need men's clothing, children's clothing, all the way from babies up to young adults, shoes, homewares. What else do we need? Bags, socks, underwear, pretty much everything. we will happily take any donations because as I said, Kmart's 5 hours away, so pretty much to buy anything you've got to do this big 10-hour round trip. And we've already had families say to us, oh, we didn't have to go to Kmart because we managed to find clothing for the boys because they're growing and they needed new clothes.
Yeah, it cut out just a little bit there. You're frozen, actually.
Oh no.
So no, that's okay. If you can just say that about the boys again.
Yeah, so we had a family say to us that they didn't have to go into Kmart, which they were planning to, because they needed new clothes for all their boys who were sort of growing at a crazy rate, which boys want to do. And she said we didn't have to go to Kmart. We were able to come to the op shop and get clothes. So we can already see that it's working.
That's fantastic. And I also saw that there was towels, sheets, blankets, toys, and homewares, pots and pans and cutlery. So there's quite a long list, and I'll put those in the notes for the podcast conversation as well, so people can go back to them.
Fantastic.
But I have heard that those packages can really take a lot of things. So the reason that one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is influence and change, because I think that, as the quote said, when we're aware, then we have a chance to do something. So what would you like to influence and change by having this conversation with me today?
I guess I think it brings attention to the fact that self-determination in Indigenous communities is absolutely pivotal to things being successful and working. There's always been a conversation around self-determination in the Northern Territory, but I think, this was an idea that was, come up with by a local woman and is now being run by another local woman. And it's being really successful, and it's benefiting their community, and it's benefiting the students in the future, and it's creating really positive change. And I think that's what we need to always sort of be remembering. And, I like drawing attention to the fact that this was a grassroots initiative by local women. And when we give Indigenous people and communities the opportunity to make decisions about their own life and their own community, we see incredible things happen and incredible changes occur. And that's one of the things that I guess I'd like to bring attention to, is that's what we need to, as a nation, be continuing to remind ourselves that self-determination and Indigenous people getting to choose their own futures and make decisions about their lives.
I often ask a mystery question, which is part of the events that I run. So if you were at one of my events, the question I might ask you is, what do you hope to do that you've never done before?
What do I hope to do that I've never done? So that's a fantastic question. I guess what I hope to do is just to keep, I suppose I am doing it. That's a terrible answer. But I suppose what I hope to do is to continue to learn from the people here and to speak Warlpiri. That's one of my goals. Every night I'm practicing the Warlpiri language lessons so that I can then listen to Warlpiri people in Warlpiri and, bring that next level of understanding to my dealings with their culture and my understanding of their culture as I'm operating. So I guess speaking Warlpiri is the one thing that I'm hoping to do, because I hope that will lead me to then having a greater understanding of the place that I'm living in.
Fantastic. As I said, I think we all should be able to speak some Indigenous words, if not the whole language, because that's really so important. I went to school with an Aboriginal girl who was 7 right through my whole schooling, and not to be able to understand her language, although she spoke English, but it's just not the way it should be, I don't believe. So when you go to this bilingual conference that you're going to in Darwin, is that run by the education department, or what are you expecting to happen over those 3 or 4 days that you're there?
It is. So it's run by one of the bilingual heads of department of bilingual, and essentially what they're planning on doing is talking with Indigenous staff members and Indigenous teachers who are classified as teachers' assistants, but it really undermines what they actually do, because they are leading the classroom and teaching their own language and culture and running whole sessions and whole days sometimes. And so it's working with them to empower them and come up with more resources that our Indigenous teachers can use, but also help non-Indigenous teachers. How do we support the Indigenous teachers in our school to be able to teach their language, to be able to teach their culture, recognising that they don't have a university degree or training. And so these Indigenous teachers are coming in and we need to be training them up and creating resources with them and training them in, how best to teach kids to read and write in their own language.
Sounds fascinating. I'm sure it will be an incredible experience to get brains together who are keen to make that change and to help to influence the growth of our young people. And thank you so much for your time tonight. Have you a quote to leave with us?
Yeah, I guess the quote that I use the most in my day-to-day life was actually a quote by a woman who lives in a Warlpiri community called Orme Gallagher, and she said, you're a visitor here, and as the visitor, your most important job is just to listen to us and learn from us, and then we can work together. And that's something that I try and remember every day when I'm out here, is that's my job as a teacher here, is to listen and to learn, and then to work in this community to the benefit of these students.
Thank you so much for your time, Courtney. It is just an absolute delight to meet you, and they are very lucky to have you as part of their community, and I'm sure your contribution is very valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was lovely to meet you too.